Vikings Valhalla Season 1 takes place in 11th century Europe. On St. Brice's Day, King Ethelred II ordered a massacre of Vikings on the island, including women and children. But the slaughter did not go unnoticed in the north, where King Canute of Denmark sent out a call for all Vikings to gather in Kattegat and formed an army of revenge. King Ethelred II had even killed a member of the Kingsguard named Sten, so Sten's half-brothers Harald Sigurdsson and Olaf Haraldsson joined Canute's host seeking revenge. Meanwhile, Leif Erikson and Freydis Eriksdottir chased after a ship seeking revenge of their own. In her youth, Freydis had been raped and branded with a cross by a Christian Viking named Gunnar Magnusson. Freydis saw Gunnar arrive to Kattegat aside Olaf Haraldsson, but Leif held her back so as to wait for a better time to kill him. Freydis chose to kill Gunnar during the feast. Since Freydis had already slept with Harald Sigurdsson, he stepped in and brokered a deal. Freydis would be spared if Leif agreed to captain a ship in the Viking war force, and he did just so. So Freydis stayed behind in Kattegat with Jarl Harkon, and Leif sailed over to England with Harold. Over in England, King Ethelfred II fell ill. He gave Queen Emma of Normandy terms to present to the Vikings, but Emma had no intentions of bargaining with them. Emma chose to fight. First, she sent her stepson and Earl Godwin up to Tamworth Castle in Mercia. Prince Edmund got Edric Striona to agree to ride south and fight for England. On their way back to London, Prince Edmund and Earl Godwin heard the bells ringing, which meant that the king had died. Meanwhile, the Vikings landed in Kent, fought, and took it over. The Lady of Kent told them that King Ethelred had died 10 days prior. That upset Harold, who had come for revenge against the man behind the St. Brice's Day massacre. So King Canute promised Harold the head of Ethelred's son, Edmund. After going north to London, Harold and Leif devised a plan to take King Edmund, and King Edmund devised a plan of his own. He met up with Striona and told Striona to cross the river and pin the Vikings in between the river and the marsh. So all he had to do was wait behind his walls until Striona moved into position. He had just one job, and he failed. King Canute taunted King Edmund, so Edmund rushed out to fight before his allies from Mercia had time to arrive. The Vikings feigned a retreat, and then they broke the bridge to prevent Edmund himself from retreating back inside his walls. When Edric Striona arrived, he decided to not join the battle. So King Canute casually rode up onto the bridge, took the king, and thus took England.
Bring me the boy king. Bring me England.
Harold was about to take out vengeance on former King Ethelred's son, King Edmund, but King Canute stopped him and pardoned Edmund so that they could work together. Meanwhile, Olaf captured Queen Emma and her children, and he hid them. But Harold found Emma, and Earl Godwin found her kids. Canute beheaded Striona as a traitor and began to rule England alongside King Edmund. Canute then offered Emma her freedom, but she chose to remain and help him and Edmund rule England. In time, they became lovers. Canute received word that the Wends of the East were threatening Denmark, so he married Emma and sailed off to defend his country. Canute's father ruled England in his stead, and he ruled with an iron fist. Forkbeard killed Ealdorman Sigurfirth of Wessex and gave Wessex to Earl Godwin, who had already begun to make moves of his own. When Earl Godwin had found out that Canute and Emma had become lovers, he realized that the power was shifting from Edmund to Emma, so he baited Edmund into an accident in sight of the Ealdorman. Before they rode up, Godwin secretly killed Edmund with a puncture to the heart, and he almost got away with it, but Emma was suspicious. Emma double-checked Edmund's body and discovered the puncture wound. She called out Godwin, but in a way, Edmund's death benefited her, as her husband Canute was now the sole king of England. Unfortunately, a new problem arrived. Olaf had sailed east and told Canute's wife about Emma, so Queen Elfivu sailed west, and when she got there, she leveraged the threat of her naval power to gain influence at court. Elfivu threatened Emma, which proved to be a mistake. Emma is a fighter. She finally convinced Forkbeard to trust her, and they devised a plan with Earl Godwin. Earl Godwin earned Elfivu's trust by getting Forkbeard to exile Emma back to Normandy in front of Elfivu. Elfivu watched Emma sail away, but she still refused to turn over Canute's fleet to his father, so he leveraged Godwin to enact a second plan. Elfivu is from Mercia, so Godwin told Elfivu to prove that she is Forkbeard's ally by riding to Mercia and gaining their support. But it was just a trick, a distraction. Their adventure to Mercia simply bought time for Forkbeard to find Elfivu's fleet. And when Elfivu returned to London, she was greeted by a surprise, Emma of Normandy.
Where is Forkbeard?
Where he should be, with his ships and his grandsons.
Jarl Harkon sent Freydis on a pilgrimage to Uppsala to seek her destiny. On their way through Sweden, they were attacked by one of Jarl Kåre's berserkers. He nearly killed them all, but Freydis strangled him with a bracelet. Freydis took her lone survivor to a healer, But when she told her that they were attacked by a man with a mark on his forehead, the healer advised Freydis to leave immediately for Uppsala. So Freydis went to Uppsala. Her goal was to learn her destiny, so she underwent a ceremony under a special sword. During that ceremony, Freydis entered a vision with the Old One, a pagan seer. The seer told Freydis that her destiny was to be the last. Meanwhile, Jarl Kåre found his dead berserker. He traced 2 trails of blood to the healer's cottage and killed everyone there except for a baby. As this was happening, Freydis was praying in the temple of Uppsala, and somehow she was warned about the massacre, so she asked for a horse and was given the special sword as well. When Freydis found Jarl Kåre, he saw the glyphs on her sword, so he stopped his men from killing her and found out that the seer had told her that she was the last. As a result, he spared her life, at least for the time being. Freydis then rode to Kattegat to warn Jarl Håkon, and she trained to become a shield maiden. Jarl Kåre went to Uppsala, where he had flashbacks to his older brother being sacrificed as a kid. That is why Kåre had become a Christian fundamentalist. Revenge. Nevertheless, despite being a Christian, he spilt his own blood so as to visit the seer. The seer told him that Freydis is the cross who carries the sword, and this angered him because he wanted to be the cross that carries the sword. Kåre slaughtered every pagan there, and then he formed an alliance with the other Christian fundamentalist, Olaf. Olaf's goal is to rule all of Norway and convert everyone to Christianity. Olaf feared that Canute would not permit this, so Olaf sailed to Denmark and told Canute's wife about Emma. Olaf tried to buy her fleet, which she denied, but she sailed to England and hid her fleet from Forkbeard, which meant that it could not be used to attack Olaf. In order to control Norway, Olaf would have to take over Kattegat, so he met up with Kåre and they forged an alliance. During their meeting, Kåre kept speaking to someone inside a cage, but when Olaf pulled aside the tarp, no one was there. So basically, Kåre believes that he has trapped the seer from his pagan visions, and he may have done just so, but Olaf thinks Kåre's crazy. They planned to attack Kattegat during the high tide of the Wolf Moon, but Harald attempted to stop this by brokering a treaty between the two sides. The treaty failed, but Harald used the opportunity to warn Leif that they would be attacking on 2 fronts, including the sea. Olaf suspected that his brother Harald would do this, so Olaf didn't attack by sea. Instead, he reneged on his deal with Kåre by waiting back and letting Kåre's men die, taking the city. During the battle, Freydis got into a one-on-one with Kåre, but he outclassed her with the sword. Nevertheless, she improvised and shanked him with the knife. She then took back her special sword and used it to behead him. Meanwhile, Olaf finally entered the city and claimed it as his own. Unfortunately for Olaf, he would not hold Kattegat for very long. Shortly after he claimed it, Forkbeard arrived, so Olaf and his men fled, and so did Freydis. To become a shield maiden, Freydis had promised to protect Kattegat to the death, and she was willing to do so, but Jarl Håkon's dying words were for Freydis to do whatever it took to survive since she was the last, according to the prophecy. So in the end, Freydis grabbed an injured Harald, put him on a horse, and they ran, just as the seer had foreseen.
You are the last daughter of Uppsala.
Unlike Olaf, Freydis, and Harald, Leif stayed behind, mourning Liv. Before the battle, Leif had told Liv that there was a darkness in his father that he could not control, and that he shares that same darkness. Liv had asked him why she'd never seen it, and he had said that when he was with her, he could control it. But Liv died in his arms, so Leif's darkness finally came out when a group of men chased some women into the building. Leif killed them all. Then, Forkbeard's innocent grandson ran into the same building. So Vikings Valhalla Season 1 ended with Leif unknowingly threatening the life of King Canute's son.